All right. Hello, everyone. If you could please type your name, your degree level, your major, and your graduation date into the chat. It'll help us kind of keep track of attendance for our event. So we really appreciate that. Again, so I've kind of posted that into the chat as well, and I'll repost that message a few times during the presentation tonight. So or this afternoon, I guess. It's not as late as it feels, I guess, sometimes. But yeah, so anyway, I appreciate that just for the attendance portion. So today's ECS presentation is before you say yes, evaluating and negotiating your offer. We have several events going on this week, and then later on tonight, we do have a lab to prepare for the career fair. So we'll talk about that. That's at 6 o'clock. So if you're interested in that, or if you're not signed up on for the career fair, you may wish to go ahead and go to that lab and explore that platform a little bit, since we do have the virtual fair this year. Um, but it is right at 3 o'clock, so I'm gonna get started with the introduction slide here. And oh, okay. Okay, so first, before we really get started and get into the thick of it, I wanted to mention that we do we do have the 8 career competencies. I wanted to make sure and mention that we talked about a lot of times. It's not only about technical skills on your resume or interview or anything like that. So now, if you're already negotiating an offer, you've probably already heard of these kinds of things, right? So you may already know the value of those. So pardon me, just doing a reply there. So again, these are the 8 career competencies: critical thinking, communication, teamwork, digital technology, leadership, work ethic, career management, and global fluency. So you'll want to make sure that you weave those into your resumes and your interviews, so that employers know that you have those employable skills as well as your tech skills when they're looking at you as a potential candidate. Okay, so today we're going to first start out by talking about evaluating your offer. So, say the $1 million question, right? It's what would you want to do this day after day, for the rest of your life? So, those are sometimes easy. Students come in, you've got an offer, you're excited, or well, there's this other company I'd really like to look at, so what do we do? Do you have a good understanding of the job responsibilities and how you'll be spending your time? Sometimes it's nice if it's a return offer, you may have already spent some time on that, so you kind of know what this company works like, but they may have an offer in a different, slightly different role or a different area than your internship was. So you may want to really find out about that, especially if you've gotten to know anyone within the company, so that you can kind of check out, okay, what do people say? What are they saying about that manager or that position? You don't want to get too focused up on the people, but more about the overall company. So did you like the people that you did meet when you were interviewing? Did they answer your questions? During the interview process. Were they, forthcoming with some information for you, kind of help you to understand their roles within the company? Will the job be challenging enough or rewarding enough? Those kinds of things. So really, you want to think about all of those things. You don't. When you get an offer, it sometimes can be very exciting to say, okay, I got the offer that I've always wanted. But it's good to really calm down and look through it and say, okay, the things that aren't on this paper about this company, do I really like those things? Hopefully you've looked at some of that through the interview process, so that you already have a good, clear idea of what the answer to that question is. the potential for advancement, all of those things. This is why I say it's good to ask those questions during the interview process, because when you do get to offer time, you really want to have those questions kind of answered so that you can break down and start looking at more of the nuts and bolts, of the salary and the compensation and the different benefits and things that are being offered. So that everyone's aware, ECS Offer Guidelines. You're probably pretty aware this is straight from the Higher Illini site. So these are the updated ones from the start of the semester on that website. So, but it's pretty much the same as it normally is. So if you're returning from a return offer for after having worked a co-op or an internship, it's a little bit different depending on if it was a summer program or a co-op from the spring or a prior semester. But internships, we do have kind of that 3 weeks after the start of the semester, at least is what we recommend that companies give, that kind of guideline. So we don't like if someone's trying to give an exploding offer or something like that. But one reason is, on a return offer, you have had a chance to kind of work there and see, how much you would like that offer, going into the recruiting season, so some of those questions do come around. And sometimes when someone offers something, especially out of a fall interview, so like following up from the career fair, that would be a fall interview. And then November 15th, or 3 weeks after the offer is made. So sometimes if they have a long interview process, they may be making the offer in mid-November. In that case, we do ask that they give you at least 3 weeks. For one thing, you're coming up on finals. There's plenty of other stresses in your life, and you're considering a, major life decision here. So, at least 3 weeks, I think is fair for us to ask employers to give. So, yeah, do not renege on an offer. I like to just say it and leave it at that, right? If you want to have a big discussion about, why you shouldn't renege and things like that, certainly feel free to make an appointment and we can, discuss pros and cons of specific offers, or if you feel like you might have a very special circumstance or something and you want some advice on that. But overall, it's just not good. It's not integrity. And, in the long run, there's always a chance that something can come around and kind of bite you a little bit, especially if you're, doing different internships. A lot of recruiters, switch from one company to another, if there's an opening for like a senior recruiter position and they were, in a lower rank with the company that they're at now. So, sometimes it can follow you over to another company. So it's just not a very good idea to get into that mindset and to accept an offer and then renege on it. Reneging isn't saying no. There's nothing wrong with saying no to an offer. But reneging is accepting the offer and then saying, oh no, wait a minute, I now have a better offer, so I'm not going to come work for you. And so that's just not good practice. Okay, negotiating your salary and benefits. So probably, if I was in the room, I'd ask for a show of hands. How many people does that make nervous or give you anxiety? Yes, there will be a recording posted, actually. So if you do need to leave early, I'll just let you know that will be something. But we'll have some time for question and answer at the end. And this isn't terribly long, so you might want to stay for that. But yeah, I did see the quick question about the recording. There will be a recording. How many of you then are nervous? I would ask for a show of hands. This room's fairly full, so I don't think I'm going to have you post that in the chat. I'm just going to assume that it'll be like usual. Usually most of the room, a good 2/3 at least, are a little bit nervous, I don't know, I don't want to talk about that. It gets a little bit I'm not real confident, why should I ask for more? It seems like this offer is kind of fair, those kind of things. So, what's the important about negotiating an offer? Even if you've already made the evaluation, this is a company you want to work for, and you look at the dollars and it's like, well, maybe it's mid-range, maybe you think it's just a little off. Should I really ask? This is good enough, So first, one thing to know is that making that ask is not going to hurt you if you're professional, and handle things professionally, and all that kind of thing, and don't be um, kind of rude about things or anything like that. But as long as you're a professional in your communication, making the ask is always the right thing to do. The worst that happens is that they say, no, we don't negotiate, right? And then maybe something further can come out of that, some kind of side negotiation about a bonus, or about some extra paid time off or something like that. So that could happen. It's very unlikely, very rare that there's a rescinded offer just because you asked to negotiate your salary. So, but you look at these two starting salaries. So the person that didn't negotiate started about $4,000 less. And you look at the retirement, then that means less money was matched, to the 401k, or, on the percentage there. So that means, there's that difference every year. And so after 10 years, you're looking at $50,000, that's a full year's, salary for this person plus, so, and when you're dealing with higher salaries, it could potentially even be more money, when you're talking about a percentage of the salary. So, it's important to go ahead and make the ask, even if you only get a few thousand a year more. It adds up over the course of your, and it even can follow you to the next raise if an annual raise, say, is done on a percentage, or something like that. Oftentimes there is a little bit of that factored in, so you want to make sure that you do, start out the best that you can get from the company. So 4 steps to negotiation. First thing, know your value. You have to know, really what you're worth, and then kind of benchmark your salary. So, what is the salary that they're offering versus that salary, in other companies, out there on the open market. Is it, where should it be, kind of thing. And know the strategy that you're going to go in with to the conversation. Kind of, if you really kind of value that, maybe you have an idea that they don't normally negotiate, but they're usually willing to offer some sort of a bonus, then maybe you ask about the negotiation and then say, well, since we can't get to that, can we possibly look at the bonus? So there's some different strategies that you can use for those things. And then practice the conversation a little bit over and over, kind of in your head or with different answers. What would I say in this scenario? What if they come back with this? And so doing those kinds of things just to build your confidence up, so that when you're talking, you won't have too much out of the channel. I'll put a link to the ECS channel at the end. I just saw that also in the comment chats for that. And we'll be explaining step by step on the benchmarks as well, so as we go through. But the first part, knowing your value, you are your own brand, right? So you already know who you are. What's your value, what have you done? So only you can tell them about the great things that you've already done. So you need to know, what projects you've been successful at. If you worked an internship for that company, that could be a great value. But you also want to look at the specific things, like if you save them, X amount of dollars with one project, or, thank you for including that YouTube link. I appreciate that in the comments. So, but yeah, so you want to make sure and talk about those kinds of things. If you've had a project where you were the lead on it, and it was a successful project that a company was able to roll out, maybe for a different internship that you've worked, or maybe you worked a little bit in the past. Perhaps you're a graduate student and you worked a couple years in between. So you want to be able to talk about your successes and what you've had, those kinds of things. So whether it's in projects, internships, whatever, you really need to know your value and not be overly modest, be willing to say, okay, well, when it comes down to it in the conversation, and they're like, well, why should we pay you the higher end of what the salaries are for an entry level engineer? And you can let them know, well, because I'm higher in talent, I've done these things, and I can put them to work for your company and have the same results that I've had in the past. So benchmarking, someone had asked about that in the chat a little while ago. So we're right here on this sort of benchmarking step. So this is where you're kind of going to research and identify the job title, find out the actual salary range, for your target salary, identify that sort of, what we call the bolstering range. So that's where you start, say if you really feel like you should make 90,000 or whatever, your range shouldn't be 87 to 94 or anything like that. Your range should start at 90. It should be 90 to 95. So that bolstering is like, okay, if I really feel like 90 is what I want, then I need to say, giving a range makes you sound flexible, but at the same time, you don't want that range to be lower than what you're really, attempting to get. So that's that bolstering aspect. So an example here, Claire's a systems engineer. So, pretty good student, had 2 internships, leadership experience. Probably her resume looks really nice because she came into ECS, so she was able to get an interview, and then she had already, done a lot of mock interviews, maybe things like that. So now she has the offer because she's been able to let the company know, just how well she can do. And so the first step she does, she already knows about the company. She's done all that with it through the interview process. She knows the offer. She kind of likes the offer, and she wants to find out the salary data. So one place to look is salary.com. There are some other sites that you can look at as well. Look at the Illini Success Report data as well. Glassdoor is one. One problem with Glassdoor is being user reported. Employees report their salaries. So, you can look through that, but it's not like taking everyone's salary. So it may be skewed up or down because, someone has to decide, I'm going to report my salary on Glassdoor, something like that. And oftentimes people who are searching will report their last salary they made, things like that. So, they're not always the most accurate, but they're not, necessarily that, it's to give you kind of a general idea, like, okay, so what am I seeing? Salary.com, they pull their data in from census data, and so it's a little bit different. Illini Success Report is survey data. So when you graduate, when you're getting ready to graduate, we are asking you to fill out the survey. It's not straight from our office, it's from campus, and so they're always trying to get you, come on, fill out this survey, tell us where you're going, how much you're going to make, all that kind of thing. And so the success report is that graduation survey where everybody says, yes, I've had these offers, this is how much I'm making, and so we get a lot of that kind of information from those surveys, and so that can give you information on the starting salaries then, and they report it on a 3-year average as well. But yeah, salary.com, to bring that one kind of, you can find job descriptions and sort of compare them to what yours may not be called, like project engineer 1, but you may be able to see that it matches fairly closely to the entry level project engineer or something that you may get offered, or whatever your job may be. So you can kind of match that up a little bit to the different, job descriptions, job postings on that site. Again, that one being census data, they, pull their data in from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which you can go directly to that site, but their data tools are, a little bit harder to use. You just have to kind of play around with that one a little bit. It's not meant to be as user friendly, I don't think. It's a government site and it has a lot of extra information about unemployment and different kinds of things. So, surfing through it. And finding the pay and benefits information that's on there is very useful. It's not as user friendly. Salary.com draws their data from the same place and just makes it a little bit better. So she punches in, where she's going to be, project engineer, and she gets back the range, right? So she can see that 25 percentiles there, and the middle and median is right there, so okay, and she knows what she's being offered. Again, that's where the line success report can come in handy too, because again, you're graduating from a top engineering school, so you kind of want to see comparatively what you're making against other graduates as well. So all that is to come up with this benchmark where, okay, there's all these different places that I can draw from, pull this salary data, figure out, okay, this is what I should make. I should make about, right in the middle, 65,000, 67,000. So this is like an example here of the way we would list things on like reports by major for a line success report breakdown. So a realistic salary then is, probably around 67,000 after looking at what she's looked at in those things. And she feels like, yeah, that's probably where. So that's her target, and she wants to bolster that up a little bit and see if she can get a little bit more, right? And so, her range then would be 67 to 73, so add 5,000. Don't add, if your range is too wide, it just sounds like you're kind of just shooting kind of, well, how high can I get, so a range makes you appear flexible, but at the same time, if you make that range, 60 to 80,000, right, that's not, you're kind of crossing all kinds of lines there, so you don't want to do that. So, make your range around 5,000, and that's that bolstering part. It's just that simple. So, when you make the ask, that's how you find that part out. And we'll talk about the discussion of that then a little bit later on. But how do you do when the companies during your interview process ask about salary? A lot of times, they will either in an interview. It's pretty standard on applications, right? Everyone's probably filled out online, things like that. So trying not to answer that question. In some states, it's becoming, illegal to ask that for like what you have made or what you would like to make, just because they see that as one way of kind of locking people into a range or, discriminating in some way. So in some states, that's actually becoming, outlawed. But, even though it's not, there's usually good ways around that to kind of defer that question to keep when they ask you that, what do you really want in a salary, and they haven't made an offer yet, right? If they've made an offer, it's kind of a different story. But if they haven't made an offer yet, they're asking you these questions. What was your salary before? What do you expect in a salary? I need to know what salary you want before I can make an offer. Just give me a number. And so, here's some of the ways you can answer that. You'd like to see if you're a good fit before you discuss the salary, or you'd like to learn more about the role. You'd appreciate it if you could get an offer based on whatever is budgeted for the position, and then maybe go from there. So these are some possible ways to answer that question. Just kind of letting them know that, well, that's something we can discuss later on. I really kind of would like to take a look around the company and make sure that I'm comfortable first, that kind of thing, or, see what else is in the offer, what types of things you have as far as, paid time off, whatever else. before I discuss salary, because it's a total benefits, total package, those kinds of things are things that you can bring up as well. And so, just trying not to be the first one to mention a number is the idea behind that. If you really had to, if you felt like really pressed, and I've talked with a number of students that they felt like they were in a good spot and that offer was coming in, the negotiation kind of process of it, and they were saying, "Go tell us, what would you really need?" If you have already done your research and kind of know, that's probably a good idea of a place to start. If you feel like you really have to give a number, try to give a range and try to do the same kind of thing where, this is my target, and then bolster it a little bit, so that puts you there where if they do make an offer and it's at the low end, you still have a chance to kind of come back and bump it up into the higher end of that bolstering range if you wanted to. So as far as negotiating goes, Claire got the offer. She knows already because she's checked what salary she should be able to get. So first, letting them know that acknowledging the offer. One of the main things there is that, you're confirming your interest in the company. You like it. You're glad that you got the offer. You're letting the, in a positive tone to your statement. And you don't want to negotiate through email. So, you want to ask if you can actually get a call or something like that, so that you're able to get on the phone with someone or, see them in a Zoom. Rarely right now there may be an in-person meeting, but more likely it's going to be Zoom or the phone. Even in the past, it would have been because, companies are offering you from all over the country, so they're not just flying in to discuss the offer, right? To conduct that negotiation, you want to have your notes so that you know what you're worth and all of that ahead of time. And one thing is, don't be too nervous. You don't have to be pushy, right? So just making the ask, even nowadays when things are, a little more, if you feel solid about knowing this company, knowing the recruiters that you've talked to, knowing the offer, and you get them on the phone, then they can tell your tone a lot from your tone of voice. That's why we say don't use an email, because you may, depending on how they feel that way, they could read something into it, on that particular day. That sentence may be perfectly fine, but it could sound pushy when they read it, for whatever reason. And so if it sounds like, oh, they're not really interested, they just want to ask for more money, that kind of thing. But if your target is within range, of what they're offering, if you're not asking for something that's way higher, and you're reasonable, have done your research and know why you're asking, this is what it is, they might use the current economy as a reason why it's lower, and we can get to some possibilities of things you might ask about, because of that, and they may not want to negotiate, but that's no reason why you shouldn't make the ask, in the professional manner, because it's not personal, it's business, and the recruiters know that, the HR people know that, so you don't want to get personal about it. You don't want to have such a personal feeling about it that you feel let down if they don't give you an increase based on your offer to negotiate. So because honestly, you still have the offer. It's highly unlikely that they're going to rescind the offer because of a negotiation. And so, you want to keep that in mind as well, that as long as you're being practical and being professional, that, regardless of how it turns out, you still want to have a positive attitude throughout the whole thing, even if they do say no. We don't negotiate, right? So here's some sample scripts of things that you can say. I received your offer letter, and I'm very excited about the opportunity to join your company. As I conveyed my interview, this is exactly the type of position I was seeking. So, you really want to show your excitement, and how you match up. And in reviewing the offer, however, I'd like to discuss the salary. I've been doing a lot of research, which you should do, And then the base salary information that I found for this position for someone with my qualifications experience ranges from 67 to 72. And I expected, based on my 2 related internships, academic success, that my offer be between 67 and 70. So maybe saying, okay, I thought I'd be somewhere in the first part of that range, and so maybe the offer that she got was actually only 65, something like that. So or 64. So she's, requesting the additional $3,000, that kind of thing. So that's not an crazy request, right? She's not asking for 10 or 15% more. She's asking for, about 5% or less. So, it's not like this is, a huge amount. So sometimes they'll say we don't negotiate, right? Sometimes they'll have to check. It's pretty common that they'll have to check with someone in HR, that kind of thing, and get back to you on something like this. That happens quite a bit. But sometimes they don't want to do the base salary because it kind of locks them into that, that range, especially right now where there's some, they may have more of an ability to offer more stock options or something like that. And so then they may actually come back with a counter like that. Ordinarily, I'd be like, man, stock options aren't worth as much as getting more money on your base, right? So you might want to, but yeah, right now I'd say, hey, if they're showing that flexibility, have a good idea of what you want to do. If you're like, okay, and they're willing to move, maybe I'll say, okay, so what can you offer in more stock, or, things like that. So, if they offer something back as well. But you can also offer something else. So if they say we don't negotiate, then, we're unable to move on the base. Then you can say, well, okay, but maybe a sign-on bonus, would get me kind of there for at least the first year's salary, right? And so, would you be willing to move that sign-on bonus up a little bit so it would get me to that $67,000 range, or, something like that. So that's something that you can talk about with them as well. Oh, looks like okay. Sorry about that. Skipped a few slides. Yeah, so regardless of what their answer is, looks like we're coming to the end. Kind of one of the biggest things is whatever they say on the phone, you want to make sure that you have it in writing. If they say, yeah, go ahead and just respond to that offer, and that we sent, and then we'll mark it up at the end or whatever. You want them to send a new offer so that you can see it in writing. Make sure that they do that. And then, just so that everything is, sometimes it's not that someone's trying to mess something up or anything like that. And sometimes it just has to do with a disconnect in communication with HR and the hiring manager and something. So make sure it's in writing before you get it. And again, you don't want to take everything personal. There could even be a point where the hiring manager in the past has had the authority and maybe now they don't. And so then, a few days later, you find out, oh, hey, I'm sorry, we really can't do that. Then you still want to have to consider things. You still want to think about it. Come in and get some advice, talk to someone else, that kind of thing. What should I do? Are they just trying to play with me? Something like that. They're probably not. It's probably not the case. They're professional too. They value your reputation, but someone can make a mistake, and communication can get lost. Those kinds of things do happen.